Are you special? Is your rifle special? Is it a special purpose rifle? Special purpose rifle, that's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. And a lot of things could be a special purpose rifle, like built for a special purpose. But I think in the spirit of this episode, this was a Patreon request. I reached out to the patrons and said, hey, what do you want to hear about? And they said an S.P.R, not an S.B.R, an S.P.R, in regards to like an AR or an Ar15 or an Ar10 type build. At least I think that's what they're asking about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The special purpose rifle. I'm going to put in the bio because you should ask yourself, why do you care what this person has to say about guns or philosophy of use on guns or anything? And that's a valid, legit question you should probably ask before you take somebody's advice if it's on something as serious as survival, defending oneself, putting food on the table, things like that. They can be a weighty decision. Why should you care what I have to say? That's a good, honest question, and I would hope that you'd ask that question of anybody that you listen to. For that reason, for this episode, this is not just like a ballistics talk on like how much more powerful the 10mm is than a 9mm, or the debate between 357 and 40 Smith & Wesson. Like, we're talking about something with a little bit of philosophy behind it, and we'll talk about ballistics today too. I think the bio is important. Anyway, enough of that. I'm going to put in a version of the bio, and I'll probably expand a little bit more when it gets into tying into the philosophy of the special purpose rifle. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other three-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast, and elk and bear and wolf, and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Enough about me, guys. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. Let's get into today's topic. Alright, as Nacho Libre would say, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about special purpose rifles. And again, in the way that I think the context was meant, in the vernacular of a longer range, semi-automatic, generally Ar15 or Ar10 type build. Now, if we go to the OG of these, of which I have some experience, that would be the Colt S.P.R. That's kind of the most OG version of this that I can think of. Not going like full-blown sniper rifle. We're talking about the Colt S.P.R. and it has a pretty storied history for those of you that are newer to firearms and didn't. If you lived through like the assault weapons ban and were into guns prior to like the last assault weapons ban, you might be familiar with the Colt S.P.R. Many others may not be. This is very much, I think, maybe the first, what I would think of modern special purpose rifle like this. Whereas the military would be rocking the M16A1, A2, A4, M4 for a battlefield type infantry rifle. The Colt H.P.R was more of a precision rifle. Not a sniper rifle, but meant for a little bit more precise shooting, a little bit more range, a little bit greater velocity, a little bit of a more predictable sustained rate of fire. Now, obviously, the military ones, you can dump some rounds, but your point of impact generally would shift. The Colt H.P.R less so, a bigger, heavier barrel. So, the barrel is important, and the barrel is kind of what, in my opinion, largely defines the use of an AR type weapon. So let's talk about the special purpose rifle. You're probably talking about a longer barrel than 16 inches because of ballistics. Now, as much as people argue about like the new 7mm PRC versus the old 7 Rem mag, or the 6.5 Creedmoor versus the 308 and things like that, and there are some meaningful differences there. There can be an even more dramatic difference, even though it's the same caliber, if you're looking at actual ballistics performance between like a 16-inch barrel and a 24-inch barrel 5.56 223. You can get way more velocity, which will often translate to, if other things are being equal, greater performance downrange. So for this, for an S.P.R, we're probably talking a longer barrel than 16 inches. Not saying you couldn't do it, but and I think a common misconception is that longer barrels are more accurate. They are not necessarily more accurate. In fact, sometimes shorter barrels can be more accurate. I think that's a holdover from days of yore when you primarily shot a rifle with iron sights, and the sight radius really aided in how precisely you could aim the gun. But if you're talking about a gun mounted with an optic, you could have an AR with a 10-inch barrel, a 15-inch barrel, and a 20-inch barrel, and neither one is going to necessarily be more or less accurate than another. But one will certainly give you greater velocity than another. The longer barrel will. And for this, since we're talking about a more precise, longer range weapon, I think in general, you're probably going to want to go with a longer barrel. And I would say 20-inch at the minimum, 22, 24s, but 20 inches or greater. You could probably get away with an 18. You'll still get better ballistics than a 16, but are you really getting that much better ballistics than a 16? If you're going special, might as well go 20-inch or better, in my opinion. Probably talking about a well-made, precise barrel. Stainless steel for a long time among really high-end AR shooters have kind of been the standard. You can get really accurate chrome-lined barrels, but that adds an extra level of complexity. One more thing in the process, the barrel has to be cut precisely, be very accurate. Then you have to chrome line it, which can add inconsistencies, which can add a chance of less accuracy. Doesn't have to, but it just, there's a reason that stainless steel barrels are kind of the standard for a lot of long-range precision barrels. Even though chrome line will give you much greater barrel life and corrosion resistance and many other great properties for battlefield rifles, but this is not that. This is a special purpose rifle. So let's say 20, 22, 24-inch or longer stainless steel barrel. And you're probably going to want a heavy barrel. Now, I don't think anybody really wants a heavy barrel, but it's going to lend itself to this application because when a barrel heats up, as in when you shoot through it, that will often change the point of impact, which obviously affects accuracy downrange. Now, if the barrel is thicker, commonly target shooters and stuff will refer to it as a bull barrel, it will still heat up, but the dramatic temperature shift will be less from shot to shot because the mass is greater in the barrel, meaning that there's more metal in which to disperse that heat. To put this very simply, You want a gradual change in temperature. That's what you're going for, so you have a more gradual shift in your impacts downrange. Think of it like boiling water on a stove. If I turn my stove on full blast, as high as it'll go, to boil a pot of water, I put a small pot with a very little bit of water on there, it will boil faster, and it will also cool off faster once I turn that stove off. If I put a big giant pot of water on the same stove, same amount of heat, but it's a lot of water and a lot of pot, it's going to take a lot longer to boil, and it's going to take a lot longer to cool down. Kind of illustrate that. So for this, a heavier, thicker barrel. Doesn't have to necessarily be a full-blown bull barrel, but probably thicker than your normal profile barrel. And not saying that thin barrels, even pencil barrels, can't be very accurate. They can be very, very accurate. But they probably have more dispersion between your first shot and your 15th shot than a thicker, heavier barrel. Again, that's kind of the point. Now, if we move back from this, you're probably talking about free-floated handguards. Not that you can't have an accurate rifle without them, but it's not necessarily about how small a group you can shoot. I think that's a common misconception on free-floated handguards. Free-floated handguards means generally what you're resting the rifle on does not impact the point of aim, point of impact. And there's no reason on a special purpose rifle you would not have a free-floated handguard if you were specifically building a special purpose rifle. So a free-floated handguard of some type. This is not going to be a lightweight gun, so you probably don't have to skimp on the lightweightness of the free float tube. And for optics, you're probably going to go with something a little bit more magnification, a little bit beefier, a little bit bigger than your normal things you would see on a fighting AR. Like more than a red dot with a magnifier, more than an LPVO. You might be talking a 2-7, a 2-10, a 3-9 is a real classic one that wouldn't be horrible on this. You might even go bigger, whatever, to 12, to 20, to 24. I mean, you get as big as you want, I guess. But remember, there's no free lunch. And then you're probably going to want a very good trigger in this rifle because kind of gearing it towards accuracy and consistency. And the most inconsistent part of this whole thing is probably you. So to minimize that, you're probably going to want a good trigger, and you're probably going to want a bigger, beefier, heavier stock on this. You're probably not going to want to go with your classic collapsible M4 type buttstock. And actually a really good choice for this is your classic Marine Corps M16A2 stock. It's a good choice for this. Doesn't adjust, it doesn't move. Therefore, not going to introduce any inconsistencies. You could beat a dude to death with that stock, and it's probably going to be just fine. It's not going to move, wiggle, anything else. You could also get some of the more high-end adjustable stocks for cheek piece rise and length of pull and all that, if you need that. Again, that old Marine Corps M16A2 stock for this will work just fine. And you kind of want a heavier stock because the front of this gun's going to be really heavy. If you put a really lightweight chintzy stock on the back, it's just going to be as unbalanced as one kid on a seesaw. Now, really important for this is the ammo, right? Because you could have the most accurate rifle in the world if you were shooting 3 or 4 MOA ammo, some cheap bulk pack Russian steel Tula ammo, then you're shooting a 3 or 4 MOA gun, right? And this, you went through a lot of trouble and a lot of expense, I reckon, on this rifle. Give it a garbage diet. You're probably going to want really, really good ammo for this. Now, we're sticking with 223. Then the standard today, the gold standard today is Mark 262. 77 grain, OTM, it's a match bullet. It's made for many things, but this is somewhere where it would shine. It's expensive ammo. This is an expensive gun. This is going to be expensive ammo if you want to get the most out of it. That's not the only load, but that's kind of the standard. If you can, your gun may or may not like that load. Oh, I didn't mention on the barrel twist, but for this, you're really going to want a 1 in 8, a 1 in 7, probably. Get away with a 1 in 9, but if you're special ordering the barrel anyway, today, a 1 in 8, 1 in 7. A 1 in 9 is fine for a general purpose rifle, but really a 1 in 7, 1 in 8 for this would be okay, would be preferred. But the similar characteristics in the bullets for the accuracy, for the downrange performance, for the extra weight, So you're talking a 77 grain, you might be talking about a 75 grain match bullet, a 69 grain match bullet. Something much more tailor-made to this than your typical, vanilla 55 grain XM193 or your 62 grain green tip, right? Those are not the rounds for this. Now, that's for the 5.56. 5.56, with the most specialized rifle in the world in 5.56, 5.56 is a limiting factor. 5.56 will do okay with those specialty rounds out to 5, 6, 800 yards. 5.56 is not the greatest man stopper at close range, and you're only losing massive amounts of energy at those longer ranges. So there's a big case to be made for moving up in a heavier caliber. Now, we'll get to the Ar10 in a minute, but if you want to stick with the Ar15 platform, you're probably buying specialty dedicated upper for this anyway, or specialty dedicated barrel, which means probably you're just going to get a whole new upper, which means there's not a whole lot of extra added expense with going with a different caliber. Kind of one of the ones that shine in this is the 6.5, and that's the 6.5 Grendel. The 6.5 Creedmoor if you want to go move up to the Ar10, but we're not there yet. The 6.5 Grendel has pretty good, actually very impressive for the size of cartridge it is, downrange performance for something that'll fit into an Ar15. The 6.5 Grendel would be a good choice for this. Ammo's not going to be cheaper. Remember, you're not probably shooting 55 grain bulk pack ammo through this thing, so you're probably spending well over $1 a round anyway. So does it really matter? It's probably going to not be that much difference between really, really good top of the line match grade 223 and 6.5 Grendel. So it starts to become more intriguing in this platform. Now, if you want to move up to the AR10, classic is the 308. The 308 is going to give you a lot more, let's say, gusto downrange. Let's say you're pushing out to 800 yards. And the heretofore mentioned loads in the 5.56 will do it, but it's apples and oranges compared to hitting an actual target at 800 yards. I'm talking about a target that's trying to kill you with a 5.56 at 800 yards versus a 308. There's a lot more, again, gusto, stopping power with a 308 than there is a 5.56. That's just the nature of the beast. Look at those two cartridges in your hand. The powder reservoir alone, right? You can't cheat physics. It's a bigger, beefier cartridge. The 308 is not a bad choice for this unless you want to go really, really, really long range, in which case there are better choices like the 6.5 Creedmoor. Even the 6 Creedmoor would probably arguably be better. I skipped over the 6 Arc. I try to generally stay away from stuff when it's brand new. 6 Arc's been around a year or two now. You may look at that. But for the AR10, the 308, 308's a very versatile cartridge, but this in and of itself is not a versatile rifle. So you're probably not, again, buying cheap, white box bulk pack ammo for this because you're defeating the purpose. A really nice super accurate rifle and you're shooting 3-4 MOA ammo, then you got a 3-4 MOA gun, which you just dumped a bunch of money for no reason. The 308 will definitely give you more foot-pounds and newtons, whatever it is downrange in the 5.56. So here's the big question for this. Why are you doing this? Because if you're talking about targets inside of 500 yards, Marines have been shooting targets with basic basic M16s at 500 yards with iron sights for decades. I was one of them. If you're not now shooting your AR out past 500 yards, even with whatever optic you have on it, the limiting factor there is, I'm probably going to make a bunch of you mad, but the limiting factor is not your gun. You don't need to go out and dump a bunch more money on a gun. You need to practice. If you can't hit a man-sized target at 500 meters with the AR that you have, unless it's like a Springfield Saint or something, it's a bad AR. But if you can't do that now with the AR that you have, getting a specialty purpose AR is probably not going to help you. And if you're thinking, well, I can't even go and practice regularly at ranges out past 500 yards, well, this gun is not going to help you. Because inside of 500 yards, just a general M16, M4-ish type recce rifle or general purpose rifle is going to be better in almost every way. Right? This is not a general purpose rifle. By definition, it's a special purpose rifle. It's not good for most things. It's better at a very narrow slice of the tactical pie. I'll try and illustrate this. And I've built rifles like this in the past, and I mentioned in the bio sometimes I did regular assignments and more specialized assignments in law enforcement. One of those, I've mentioned working with the feds or for the feds before. There was a time, way, way back in history, back before, during COVID, the government said that congregations of Christians could not meet and peaceably assemble. Before people walked around with diapers on their faces. Before Instagram. Way back when marijuana was a highly illegal substance. What Mexican drug cartels would do, because it was a lot of work, especially farther up north in the United States, the marijuana over the border, they would simply send in teams in the giant, vast wildernesses of the American West to grow that narcotic and then sell it. So they wouldn't have to worry about hauling it from Ecuador, wherever they grow it down there. Simply grow it here. Makes sense. A lot less logistical nightmare. They would shoot it out with police that tried to take that controlled substance from them. So they sent us in. I was part of the people in charge of squashing that. And many times, this was big, vast, open terrain. We're talking like, you think of like the American West. Vast, open, high desert, like something you'd see in a John Wayne movie. We're talking that kind of big, open terrain. And we would often go and do and observe these things and whatever before we'd actually, literally send in the helicopters and guys and strike teams and things like that. And you might think that this is a great, great choice for this kind of rifle. But I found that it wasn't. And this was long before, talking about way back in the day. It doesn't seem, it's not actually that long ago, but so much has changed. It's a whole different world. I was big into competition shooting also at the time. And this was long before I ever saw anybody in the tactical community. I'm sure I wasn't the first. I'm not trying to say that, but it was not common. Everybody back then was rocking an EOTech. Or just plain iron sights on your M4 type rifles, your patrol type rifles. And I, from just broadening my horizons on that, I thought, well, why can't I take my law enforcement rifle and put an LPVO on it? They weren't nearly as common, but LPVOs existed largely for the tactical community. I thought, I can hit a man-sized target at 500 yards. If I put a 2 to 4 magnification optic and I still have that low 1 power, this is long before I ever heard the term recce rifle. I can have a rifle that will do most of this, because even if I'm in Overwatch at one of these giant Mexican drug cartel locations, they're not stupid. They'll send out patrols and stuff too to check the perimeter and things like that. If I get ambushed, I don't want this long-range special purpose rifle. And with that optic, I should be able to get decent hits out to 800 yards for sure. And that's the limiting factor of the round, right? So no matter how special purpose I make this rifle, the limiting factor on that is the ballistics. And this is long before Mark 262, I think, ever was heard of, at least by me. Maybe it existed somewhere, but it wasn't a thing, like, common. And it certainly wasn't a thing for us. You're talking about back then maybe heavy 64 grain, and I custom loaded 69 grain match bullets. But even then, you're talking 800 yards. Why am I going to give up all the close end stuff for the very narrow sliver of the pie on this when I could just do a recce rifle? And that was, again, that term I don't think even existed back then. Or at least it wasn't common vernacular. I could get a really good maneuverable AR-15 and a more general purpose one and put an LPVO on it and be good at kicking down doors, because it still did that too, and be good out to 800 yards. That's a general purpose rifle. That is a common combat, do-it-most type rifle. And even for that application, I chose this. And I have been, as a commander of a tactical team, and did deploy both myself and others as a designated marksman. Even for that, I didn't really see a point for this. In modern tactical scenarios, me as the commander, if I can't get you in some kind of quasi-urban or forested environment within 800 yards, usually in any kind of urban environment, suburban environment, within 3 football fields of your target, that's a failure on me. I'm not going to look to a super long range special purpose rifle to fix that. If you're inside those kind of ranges, a better all-around rifle than LPVO will do just fine. And there's always a chance that the machine can change, right? What is that quote from the great philosopher of our time, Mike Tyson? Everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face. You might have a great plan, and me as the commander, I would write operations orders, and I would hopefully have a good plan. But on first contact with the enemy, everything can change. I might be myself or have somebody else in a really good overwatch position as a designated marksman, and then, the target has moved. They decided to do this thing in another location, and I can't see them. So now I have to run up. I can either stand there and I can either just hang back and do nothing. My guys get overwhelmed, or I can move. And that special purpose rifle is not good for that. So you get the idea. It is a special purpose rifle. So here's the thing. Are you shooting to the limitation or beyond the limitation of your current setup? Also, is any of the application between, like, let's say out past 5 or out past 800 meters regularly, is that something that you are going to be doing? And even if you are, is it worth the trade-off for a more all-around rifle? The answer may be yes. One I can think of is coyote hunting. Coyote hunting out in like the Great Plains or the West where it's really, really wide open. And you're going to see that coyote from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards away. You're not going to be lugging this rifle around really far, and you're going to be shooting it off for rest. Right? That would be a good choice for a rifle like this. If you have a team and you have a giant retreat, a ranch, and your perimeter is, let's say, over past 500 to 800 yards, your perimeter, and you regularly patrol that perimeter, and you have a team, you have a guy that's going to be on the roof or in a tower or in a designated elevated location, and there's virtually no chance that guy's going to be involved in any kind of strike team. He's simply there for that application. Again, you have a team that actually do the real work, and he's just there just in case to observe. He may have to take a shot at those distances, and you want a special purpose rifle for that, then that might be a choice. As you might imagine, the vast majority of people, I don't think this applies to. And until you have a bunch of other stuff squared away and a proper general purpose battery, which I've covered on other episodes, but there are many, many more guns that are vastly more useful than this very small, again, to use what I said before, a very tiny, tiny slice of the tactical pie. Until you can cover most of the other stuff, this doesn't really make sense. And I'd hate to pee in your Cheerios, but look, if you just want guntertainment and just watch a bunch of people shoot a bunch of cool guns and tell you that you need to run out and blow $2,000 on a new gun and you're going to justify that to yourself, go ahead. You don't need me for that, and I'm not going to do that to you. Or if you just want a gun like this, you don't need my permission. I'm not your daddy. If you just want to blow a bunch of money on this type of rifle, go ahead. But don't justify it in ways that aren't justifiable. Just be honest and say, I've got a bunch of disposable income and I want to blow it on a special purpose rifle. That's fine. Or I do have one of these very small niche applications. And I can't outshoot the capabilities of my weapons platform right now. And when I meet both those criteria, maybe I look at this. Anyway, my thoughts on the special purpose rifle. You might disagree with that, but it's in the name. It's a special purpose rifle. Not a general purpose rifle by definition. It's not good at many things. It's better at a very minor portion of things and worse at most of the other things. It's a special purpose rifle. Anyway, with that, the special purpose rifle. Your tactical tip of the day. Loctite. You may never need a special purpose rifle, but what you'll probably need if you're into guns is blue Loctite. If you're doing a gun project and you're thinking, I could do it right now, or if I wait a day or two, I can go to the store and get some blue Loctite. Wait and get the blue Loctite. may not come loose on you that day or that week or even that year, but maybe a year later when you're running a tactical training class and your optics mount comes loose or your holster goes flying off or whatever the case is, right? Of all the money you're going to spend on guns, the $6 or whatever it is with inflation now, $10, $12 for blue Loctite, that is worth its weight in gold for somebody that actually does tactical type stuff or any kind of gun stuff. The blue Loctite, don't skimp on the blue Loctite. That is useful. And I've sadly learned Loctite lessons more than once, and I try and be diligent about it now. That's why I'm passing it on to you, so hopefully my training and experience can save you some heartache. And in today's episode's case, maybe save you a bunch of money. Anyway, with that, the tactical verse of the day. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be made known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. And that is in large part to myself as well. Be anxious for nothing. I've been getting a little anxious, a little bit of cabin fever, been stuck inside for a couple of days. Haven't been shooting all week, haven't been hunting all week. Supposed to be well below 0 Fahrenheit here pretty soon. The temperature is quickly dropping. And I had a bunch of other stuff to do that I thought was wiser to get done this week. And also, I didn't know that I could safely make it up in the mountains to go shooting or hunting, as the roads have just been really bad and it just didn't seem wise. So I'm getting a little stir crazy. But again, be anxious for nothing. We're so anxious. So much of like social media and the news and stuff today is predicated, is literally preying on you to make you anxious, to make you engaged, either make you have some visceral reaction to disagree with somebody or to show you a bunch of stuff that you already know and already agree with and be like, yeah, to make you anxious. But be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. Make your request known to God. If God is for us, who can be against us? Be anxious for nothing. What are those things compared to my eternal salvation? Right? It's a small thing. Whatever it is, it's a small thing compared to my eternal salvation, which I have assured in Christ. I do myself well to remember. And hopefully in my self-remembering, I remind you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.